We got it. Okay, what do I need here? David, are you there? He's muted and he's no video. Ah! Don't know what that means. So, oh.
Hey, Mike.
Oh. Hey, Josh. Is that you? That is you.
It's me.
Okay. You see, okay. I pressed the wrong button, man. I had it going. Let's see. Where am I? Oh, try that.
I see you. I hear you. You're fine.
We're good. Okay. A little too many windows open or something. Yes. So yeah, David's here as well, but he's not here. You know. Yeah.
He's here, but not here. Yep. The usual.
Yes. He's out wandering around someplace. Yes. Yeah.
Well, there's a Midco Solid Waste board meeting right now, so he's probably
okay.
Maybe he has two computers open or something.
Let's see. Yeah, there's a yeah, I mean, yeah, we've got there's a Jared Golden little virtual pep rally thing going on in the living room. Another Zoom meeting. So I was kind of was bouncing over there. Then I came over here, and I did know for certain that this would let me on because I'm already logged in over there.
Okay.
to another event. So this is,
To another Zoom event?
yeah, to another Zoom event, the same
Okay.
email login.
Oh,
But
But
they
it-
let me in, so.
it worked, so that's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's John. Hi there.
Hey, good evening.
Hey, John.
How you doing?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Doing
Good.
well. Doing well.
You guys expecting snow tonight?
It's a cold rain.
Yeah.
It's and it's picking up, but I don't know if it's going to turn or not.
Yeah.
So where are you? Are you up in Bangor?
I'm in Bangor. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're saying we're on the fringes of it, if anything. So
Okay.
traveling to Portland tomorrow to go play with a couple of grandkids. So
Well, that's
I'll see some there.
yeah. But how many people have their studded snows on? I actually do, but that's because my car died while they were still on, and I just got it resurrected 2 days ago. And I decided, well, why switch over for 3 days? It'll be illegal.
Good timing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I'm getting mine on in 2 weeks. I'm driving to New York for Thanksgiving. So
I mean, are we talking upstate area where where it snows? Albany's, that area?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Syracuse, Ithaca
Okay.
area.
That can be treacherous.
Yeah, it definitely can be. And I've got a Prius, so I need every advantage I can get to not fall off the road.
Yeah.
So, you might want to pick up a few cement blocks or something just for added ballast.
But I've been surprised. I mean, I've driven in some pretty bad snowstorms with this Prius with really good snow tires, studless, and it's been great.
Yeah, that's good because you've got that hill to negotiate.
Yeah,
You've got to be able to get up the hill. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had trouble getting up that hill in the past without snow tires,
Yeah.
with the front wheel drive.
I could see it. Yeah. Yes.
Hi, Jonathan.
Gina, Jonathan, how are you?
Good.
No, I did see just a little bit of snowflakes yesterday afternoon. I mean, it was just spit just a little bit.
Yes,
Mhm.
spitting snow.
Yeah. That was it. Yeah.
Okay, Steven's coming in now. So we're not going to see Jordan tonight.
I saw that.
And let's wait one more minute. Hi, George.
Good evening.
Hey, George.
Good to see you all.
Seeing you.
Okay, 20 more seconds.
Okay.
All right, it's 7:01. I'll call this meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Let's first start with public comment. Let me see. I don't see any attendees. And I did receive a few emails from people when I posted about the survey on the Lincolnville Google group. There was some confusion. One person asked, do I have to fill it out again? I filled it out online, and then I got the paper survey, and I clarified that they only had to fill it out once. And there was another person that asked if they thought that the survey was only for people that had broadband. And I said, no, in fact, it's for any resident in Lincolnville. And I really hope that perception is not out there, that the survey is for people that do or do not have broadband. So,
See.
yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to the approval of the minutes. Why don't we start with the October 8th minutes? I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the October 8th minutes.
Okay, moved by George and seconded by Mike. Any discussion? Okay, no discussion. I'll call for a vote. Mike?
Yes.
Gina?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Cheryl?
I don't know what I'm saying yes to, but
We're voting on the October 8th minutes.
oh, okay. Yes.
Okay, and I vote yes. So motion passes. And sorry, did I say, I'm not sure which, I've got September 24th and October 8th.
Well, we actually did 10/8 first.
Okay,
You said
so
10/8, so we got to do 9/24 now.
okay, thank you. So I'll entertain a motion regarding the September 24th minutes.
So moved.
Yeah.
Okay, moved by Mike, seconded by Gina. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll call for a vote. Mike,
Yes.
Gina,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Okay, and I vote yes. So motion passes. Thank you very much. All right, well, let's move on. We have John Doherty from Mission Broadband. Hi, John.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, indeed.
Thanks for coming. Do you want to just tell us a bit about what you do?
Yes, we can. I'd actually like to compliment you guys. A broadband committee at 7:00 at night with 8 people and 1 missing is 9. That's probably a tops that I've seen in the last couple of years.
Thank you.
So that's good. That's good. So yes, Mission Broadband, we started Mission Broadband in April of last year. So we'll be coming up on 2 years here. And it was a group of us, I'll say people that have been in the industry for a lot of years. And we started discussing the owner, I'll say Jim Rogers has a consulting group for Infinite for the last 24, 25 years. And he, he's opened a couple other similar businesses that have to do with healthcare and working with the government to subsidize healthcare industry for basically circuits is what it comes down to. So he built the largest healthcare network for the government subsidy back in 2012, I'll say 2010-ish time, was a pilot program, and he won $25 million for hospitals in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And so that's what started him down that road. He's complemented that with another business, and now he has company, I should say, all companies reside out of Bangor, Maine, but he works with healthcare providers in like 20 states now. And it's just kind of subsidizing that work. So I tell you that story because what was happening, at least in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont area, was people were asking him, Jim, and this was years ago before any of this happened, I can't do telehealth. People don't have broadband. It's bad broadband. I can't do telehealth. Help me with that. He's like, I don't do broadband. I'm on the healthcare side. So he and I have known each other probably 20 of his 25 years anyway, probably more than that. He was actually a client of mine at one point when I had my own project management company. And so we talked for a few years and said, how do we try to help solve this? Well, probably everything you guys have figured out, but it's a return on investment issue, right? Across the United States. It's companies are going to come in, they're going to build down Main Street because that's where the take rate is, businesses are, residents are, and they'll leave town, right? I mean, they'll keep Main Street and they might go a little bit off Main Street, but they're not going to go out in the outer reaches and invest money because there's no return on investment. And so that's where the kind of the government public-private subsidy needs to come into play. There have been a variety of programs you may or may not have heard of, and we can talk about them in a bit, but it's called CAF, Connect America Fund, then Connect America Fund 2, and the latest one that started today is called RDOF, Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. And what those are is the FCC's attempt to get broadband across the United States, and it's done as what they call a reverse auction. and they have these census blocks, and they use data now. Again, not sure how far you've gone down this road. Everybody agrees that the FCC standard of 25.3 is just not a good standard, and that can't hold up for anything much more in the future, let alone today. And the census block data that they use is flawed. And the reason it's flawed is it's what they call self-reporting. So if I'm a phone company or I'm a cable company, I fill out a form, it's called the 477 form, and I submit that, and that tells the government, okay, I'm going to write this down. I'm going to make a map that says this area is covered. Well, it's been proven more and more places in the United States than not that if I'm again, if I report a street that has bandwidth that says that the whole census block is covered, so that means the whole town, they don't go by towns on census blocks, but basically this whole area is covered, and it's really not. And so it's bad data. They continue to use it, trying to solve it with, again, big swaths of money being thrown at it. And like I said, the latest round is called RDOF. That's, again, the standard is 25.3. And that is money that's going to be allocated here in the auction. The way they do it is called reverse auction. And so all the carriers, the service providers that want to bid on these census blocks put their best bid forward, and they start to go down the list, and whoever bids the least gets the job. Reverse auction. So it's not bidding up, it's bidding down. So that's kind of the FCC big kind of, I'll give a broad brush of how they're doing it and how they've tried to do it over the trillions of dollars over the last 10 or 15 years. They started at 4/1, they went to 10/1, they're now at 25/3, and that we feel definitely needs to increase. So I tell you all of that because of the background that Jim had with the healthcare side and understanding subsidies and government subsidies. That was kind of how we kicked off Mission Broadband. So we brought a few of us together, like I said, that have been in the industry for a long time, mostly in the Northeast. So our focus, I'll say, for the most part, has been in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. We did an island off the coast of Rhode Island, Block Island, town of New Shoreham. So they're starting their construction now. And it was that concept of, okay, how do we help communities? And that could be a town, it could be multiple towns. Vermont's doing what they call CUDs, communities of interest, community utility districts, a couple of towns together. But how do we help these communities understand broadband, listen to them and say, what do you see? What do you hear? You guys are doing a survey. That's the start, right? Talking to the town, and come up with a vision of broadband. What does that look like for these towns? And we really work with a broadband committee typically and say, what are you seeing? What do you need? Data gathering, which is the stage you're in right now. How do we gather the data that says, this is truly the map? This is the picture of what we have in Lincolnville, Maine. It's not an FCC map. It's not even a Connect Maine map, which uses kind of the same data. And they do a good job. Connect Maine does a really good job. They just come out with another round of funding as of today. How do we work with the town and say, okay, this is the picture. This is the broadband landscape picture. Here's what we understand about broadband. So it's an education process. We'll let you know what we know about broadband and our, somewhat of our opinion, if you will, at times, if you ask for it. But we understand the technology. We understand the players, certainly in Maine as well. And we understand what it takes to get to, what does broadband look like for somebody. And if that's 25.3 and that's a copper, that's great. If it's wireless, that's great. Where we are technology neutral and we are vendor neutral. We don't associate with any broadband provider, any service provider. We're completely independent. We know them all, right? We talk to them all, and again, a lot of them have been around us in the industry a long time. So we just get to know everybody through that time. So that's that first step, right? That data gathering stage, we call it. And that's a survey. That's maybe interviews with businesses, maybe a public forum that you run and have people come in and ask them just kind of the survey questions again, but just a series of questions that say, okay, how do you feel about it? What do you think about it? And put that into some context that says, here's our report. Here's what we're saying as a broadband committee. Here's what we found out, and here's what we're saying. So we just work and help through that process. Really, what we're in our I'll say the way that we work it is what we're trying to do is get to a vision and a price for that vision. And the way you get to a price is through, a regular request for proposal, an RFP process. But to get there, you got to have these other stages, which is the data gathering. What are we looking for? We will also do some high-level engineering. And so by that, what we would do is work with the town on census, tax data. What are the properties? Right, let's get those on a map. And then I believe it's CMP, right? You guys are CMP, not Versant. Right, power, yeah. So try to work with CMP and get poll data, right? So you put the two of those together and you can overlay those on a map, and then we can build an actual fiber to the premise, if that's the choice, network, and show it on a map at a very high level. It's not the detail, but it's a high level. It says, okay, if we were to cover all the roads with fiber to the, when I say fiber to the premise, I'll say fiber to the pole, because there's a couple of versions of that, right? I can run by everybody's house, but I'm not attaching to everybody's house. Some communities say, no, I want to attach to the house as well. So there's a couple of varieties of fiber to the premise. But you build that high-level engineering diagram, and the reason that you do that is twofold. One is once that's done, you're going to get a bill of material, right? So we can generate a bill of material that's going to give you a pretty good idea of price. It'll probably be a little bit high because we don't want to be low. But okay, here's what the fiber, layout would look like. Here's what it would cost if we need a central office. Here's what that's going to look like. Here's what that's going to cost. Here's all the equipment that's going to go with it. And then we'll add to that, there's the drop. There's the pole to the house, and then the termination at the house, and then, equipment inside the house, customer premise equipment, CPE. So you could separate that out, that bill of material, and say, okay, here's what the backbone cost, and here's what a central office might cost. Here's what the equipment, the electronics to drive it, to run it cost, and here's what's going to cost for on the customer side. And that just gives you an overall view of, okay, here's the total cost. I can break it out into pieces. I can do what I want with it, manipulate it. But anyway, here's what we looked at. If it was fiber to the premise, that's a design, and that's the cost. That's a general bill of material cost. Then what we do with that, along with the data that you gathered, is we put together a really comprehensive RFP and put that out, because that's what we're trying to get to. If we can get an RFP out on the street, then you're going to get the players that are going to come in and say, okay, here's what I will do, and here's what it will cost me for your town to do that. And then you get into, I'll call it revenue sharing, but it's a version, thereof of, okay, do I own the network? Do I just want somebody else to own the network? Is it a co-owned? If it's is it a TIF money that's being used? Is it a bond money that's being used? Because if it's bond money, then I have to own a piece of it if I'm a town. But really just trying to get the financial picture of that says, here's our design. And we leave the RFP what we call an open RFP. So if there's, other inventive ways or tactical and technical ways that people want to do the network, that's fine. We understand them all. And so we're not going to allow a response to come back that's not worth anything, right? We would look at it and say, okay, that doesn't fit what you guys have said you wanted. And so through that RFP process, now we've got a couple of, really final design and cost that matches, my bandwidth, my latency, my services that I want on it, my, SLA, service level agreements, all of those things that want to come into play and say, okay, here's what I really, really want. That fits what we want. And we have a cost, and we have a couple of vendors that say they can do it and they want to do it. So from a Mission Broadband perspective, what we've done is, kind of started at the data gathering stage. You guys are, already well into that. Work towards, if we want a high level engineering, if we go to the RFP, we finally get that design and that picture and says, okay, here's everything that we need. We negotiate with vendors because we understand that whole, how all of that works. So whether that's the ISP or the construction vendor or the operator, however all that's going to work. Because you won't get into the RFP, but you basically take the RFP and you have multiple sections. You could have 6 to 10 to 14 sections of the RFP, depending on how we want to break it up. And not every vendor is going to bid everything, right? They could bid just pieces of it. So that's why we want to leave it as a kind of an open design. And then, then we'll negotiate the contracts if it comes down to that. It's because you can negotiate, in good faith of, pending funding, right? So you can get to a final price. Okay, here's what everybody's willing to pay. Here's what we're willing to put back into the ISP, or back to the town, if you will, to pay off a bond. You can get all of that in good faith. You don't have to say, just because you're negotiating doesn't mean you're saying yes. You're just trying to get to that final price. And if it is a yes and funding is, created and it's a move forward, we'll, we're project managers as well. So we'll make sure we project manage it, represent the town as a project team with the town and say, okay, make sure this gets all the way to the end. So really the intent of what we do, we're consultants, obviously. And we, try to be a partner and just an extension of the volunteers that I see all on the screen here working at, 7, 8 o'clock at night. Everybody has a day job. So we're just trying to be a resource that understands all the players, understands the technology, understands broadband, understands the state of Maine, and just kind of help you through that entire process. And that could be, a local entity vendor that says, you got to negotiate and they got to expand it. It could be, a separate, absolute new internet service provider that wants to come in and overbuild and try to do that. It could be a combination of the two. Again, we're definitely neutral in all of that. We take our leads off conversations that we have with our customers, in this case, the Lincolnville Broadband Committee, and work down that road together to say, okay, that works, that doesn't work, that's not what we want to say. And I was looking at your survey, and the one thing that I'll mention, I think you said you got some phone calls and some emails, that survey is, and the broadband committee itself is if you haven't recognized it, that's your kind of your first step to your public relations campaign to get broadband in Lincolnville. Because eventually, if it comes down to money, there's going to be a vote. And if you've kept people in the dark the entire time, they don't know what to vote on, right? So you really start now, with your, whether it's minutes or just updates for the town that says, okay, we're the broadband committee, here's what we're doing. And oh, by the way, here's the survey, here's what we're trying to get from the survey. What's the purpose behind it? That's, it's really just a public relations campaign at the same time. You're just trying to build support for, okay, you're hearing it. And a lot of time it's anecdotals. That's why you do surveys that say, no, there was a great question in there. I think it said earlier, it's like, well, I thought it might be for just people that have broadband. They want to hear about it. I don't have broadband, so I don't take the survey. Mm-hmm. Those are the hard ones to get, but it sounded like you put out a paper survey, because we get asked that as well at times. We did I think I sent it to Mike, just when the pandemic happened, we said, there's a lot of sheltering in place. We understand oversubscription and everything that's happening, and people are being, slow bandwidth at home, and we understand why from a technology standpoint. But let's just, we're not frontline workers at Mission Broadband, but we could throw a statewide survey out there and just have people take it. And then whoever wants it, I looked at it today for you guys. There's only 4 people from Lincolnville that happened to take that survey, but we just give it out to whoever wants it. We didn't do it for anything besides, goodwill, if you will, to say, okay, hey, you want, here's an opportunity. People are kind of sheltering in place and using a lot of bandwidth and a lot of network right now. How's it working? And it's a very simple survey, trying to keep it, very, very low level. Yours had some pretty good questions in it that we didn't bother to get into for a couple of reasons. We didn't want to be too big brotherish. And at the same time, there was, we wanted to kind of keep it simple for people to fill it out and move on. So that's, surveys are great ways to do that. But in a 10-minute nutshell, that's who we are and what we do and how we do it.
Great. Okay. Thank you, John.
Sure.
Do we have any questions for John?
Well, yeah, you said did you work with Down East Broadband?
We did not. They did theirs just before we started.
Okay.
I have talked to them a few different times.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Okay.
And understand their methodology and how they went about theirs. Theirs is obviously owned by by them.
Yeah.
Yep. It's probably the way they set theirs up is different than a town owned. It's different than a public-private partnership as much. But
Yeah.
and that's public-private partnership is a little bit of play on words, I think, at times. I mean, it was designed around, okay, who's one of the incumbents and can I work with them, pay them a little money and they'll build the whole town out. But when you think about it, if a town goes to bid, they're going to have vendors. So you have the public side and there's always going to be a vendor. So there's always a private side. So it doesn't always have to look the same every time.
I see. Sure. Yeah.
And yep.
What are your thoughts about, you mentioned Connect America and RDOF. What are your thoughts about sources of financing for the early stage, the feasibility,
Yep.
all of that. Is there anything that we should be looking at for that?
Yes, Connect Maine, certainly. And, would have to go down through that list and see the requirements. But I say that because they have a round out right now. It's called phase 1 for phase 1 and phase 2. And it's just feasibility, this beginning stages. But there's a requirement stock, a certification or requirement stock they call, that should be filled out by you guys. Because that is what they go by and say, okay, this is, that's just their process. That's Maine's process. So there's that front level document that doesn't really have anything to do with the grant, besides that they want it filled out first and they want to approve it. And so I definitely recommend going online, getting that. And, we can talk about that as to, what to fill in there. But that is probably a key when it comes to Connect Maine monies. I don't know. I'd have to look if Lincolnville comes under Northern Border. So there's a Northern Border Regional Commission has monies that goes out there. EDA, Economic Development, that's a little bit bigger. USDA, some of your friends down the coast, Rousick, have qualified for USDA grant. So we're working with them on that a little bit. We didn't fill out the USDA grant. They had the independent person come in and fill it out, but we're helping them now that they want it. Not MDF, not Maine Development, Maine Community Foundation. They have just given out a different round of grants as well. So they're available. Nick Batista's group down at Island Institute as well. They're heavily involved, and they have some money for the different stages of the process.
And so you do believe that we could have some or all of the early work funded if we apply widely for some of these?
You may, right? I mean, we never say yes to any of that. I wouldn't say 100% usually, right? They're always looking. Whoever's giving it is looking for the other person to say, okay, what else? What do you have into it as well? So,
Right.
Thank you.
Yes.
John, how many towns have you worked with?
There's a good question. So off the top of my head, we're in different stages of different ones. How's that? So, oh gosh. Let me go back to my customer list, Josh. I can get that for you if we want an exact number, but I'm going to say there's been, I'm going to get it wrong, I think. I'll say 6 to 10-ish in Maine. Again, different variations we've helped, and some still going, still not, some not. New Hampshire and Vermont have been, the other ones, and then Block Island's the one we took probably the furthest at this point, where we're,
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
A quick question. What do you see as a rough timeline for this process?
So you're doing the kind of the data gathering now, and that's totally dependent on how active the people are and how active the town is in that engagement. And so if you've got a set date you want to do that, you may be doing something around the election next week to try to stir stuff up. And a reasonable time for that is 6 to 8 weeks. Really, it may seem long, but you really gotta. If you're pushing it and getting people to respond, it just it takes time. And then our process, if you will, the high level engineering. Again, if we can get the right data, that's usually the challenge is making sure we get all the right data first. Lincolnville's not a big area, so again, maybe 4 to 6 weeks to pull that together. Same for developing the RFP, and then the RFP you want out there 4 to 6 weeks to give people time. Part of the design of the RFP that we're trying to do to include the high level design is you want good responses and you want quality responses back. So if you just put an RFP out that says, hey, I want broadband, and you just put a couple of details into it, the vendors actually have to kind of guess, or they got to get pulled data, and they're not going to spend a lot of money, right? They're not going to spend money on their own to do a bunch of engineering in the hopes that they may or may not get a bid, right? So we try to put all of that into the RFP, so they can basically, what we call desktop engineering. They can take that information and go, okay, I've got what I need. I can give a very accurate amount of, cost. Other than that, you get a lot of estimates, and that's, not what we're looking for. We're looking for kind of set costs that we can say, okay, I can go to the voters and say it's going to be X amount of dollars to do this. So that process, again, you want to leave that out. So if we take, 4 to 5 weeks to create it with you, because we go back and forth, right, as we develop that. But that can run if you're moving forward, when we're doing the high level engineering and you want to do the RFP, we can do those at the same time, right? We just wait. We leave kind of a section for the high level engineering to be done and go, okay, that's it. You guys also have input into that too, because if we're going to create a central office, we need a place for that. And, we don't know the town as well as you do. So we kind of put the map up and go, okay, here's what it looks like. Here's where, we kind of drew all the lines to the homes, but we also like to over engineer it by like 20%, because we don't know where developments may go in the future. Mm-hmm. We don't know what technology is going to come in the future. So fiber right now is the best bet, if you will, for 10 to 15 years down the road. Should be 20. It lasts, 20 to 25 years, but I don't think anybody in technology would dare go beyond 10 years or 15 years as a guess. But the length of time, like for those, like I said, if the 4 to 5 weeks to do both of those in parallel, and then to publish the actual RFP, again, 4 to 6 weeks, so you get some time. Everybody's doing a lot. There's a lot of fiber projects going on right now, a lot of builds going on, broadband builds. So the vendors are actually busy, and for their resources internally are tight, and so to get the engineering help that they need to create responses to RFPs can be a little bit slow at times. So we like to give them, again, you don't want to rush it in 2 to 3 weeks just to get a price. Mm-hmm. You want to, give them the due diligence that they need to, get the time so they get it right.
So this is sounding like 4 or 5 months?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yes. Yep. It can be. It can be.
Thank you.
So, John, the way it looks like right now, first understand that we are, this group, we're just a standing committee. We're not a standing committee. We're this little ad hoc group that was just appointed to dip our toes in the waters, find out what's out there.
Sure.
Not make any decisions for the town.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
But what we're finding out, I think we're all coming to realize, is that what this town needs is a standing committee, a standing broadband committee. And we need an expert or consulting firm to guide us to find out what options are available.
Sure.
That being said, there are a couple options that seem to present itself, but I'm sure there's more on the table, available. And one of them is working in a regional interlocal way with some other towns around here.
Yes.
And one of them, of course, is working with the incumbent. And and another might be working with a utility way the heck up the coast, if we can connect with them, if that's a feasible operation. Anyway, so would you have any problems working with all those possibilities? That is, okay, because that's what we're trying to find out. What is the solution? Right. And,
no, we've we work again with, we know all the vendors for the most part. We certainly know the incumbents as well. We feel that the best solution is what you said, right? If a town wants to do it on their own, then we're all in, however they want to do it. And it may be a city, right? So this is an interesting question that we come up with. We think about rural America, but we're working with the city of Bangor, right? Because they have gaps in coverage. And so it's what the three things we always look at is there available broadband, and if it's available, is it adequate? And if that's there, is it affordable? Because there's always an affordability problem. And so those are the kind of the three legs that we kind of look at and go, okay, how do we work with that? So I think it would be important if you're working, either with other cities, towns, I should say, in your area, have a conversation with the incumbent, obviously. But yeah, if there's other networks, that you want to try to connect to. The good news is we've got, I've said this because I worked for a phone company, Oxford Networks, for 12 years and helped design stuff for them. We have as much fiber capacity and technology in the state of Maine as any city in the country. I don't care if it's Boston, Chicago, LA, New Hampshire. We have it in Maine. There's a lot of bandwidth and a lot of technology and fiber in the state of Maine. I know it because I've helped build it. I know where it exists. And we have the 3-ring binder that everybody talks about, right? So if you need a network connection in the state of Maine, you can get it.
I see.
There's no question in my mind.
Okay.
So you can use it to, spread that out to, if you want to connect to another network.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Can you give us a rough idea of what it costs to do the high level engineering as well as the RFP?
Sure. If you can give me just a second. I may think it looked like I'm looking at you, but I'm looking at another screen on my computer, and I want to. About how many structures would you say are in town?
Residences.
Yeah, residence and business.
We've been going with a 1,000 households.
1,000. Okay, 1,000 households.
It could be 12, it could be 14, but
Okay.
we're going with 1,000. Yeah.
Yep.
Population is 2,100 here in Lincoln.
Oh, it is. Okay. Yeah. And do you know roughly how many road miles you have?
I don't know.
43 maybe?
Yeah. Okay. And we can find all that out, but.
Yeah. I think actually 67 miles.
Oh, okay.
I'm going from CMP's presentation to us
Okay. Yeah.
of the fiber they've installed and the fiber they're going to install.
Are you talking about LCI's presentation?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
LCI. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so rough estimate would be, between 4,500 and 5,500 for an engineering survey. High being 55. Like it's probably going to be between 45 and 5.
And what's on the engineering survey? What's involved in it?
So what we'll do is try to get the tax map data for all the structures, and then we'll try to get the CMP poll data, and marry the two of those together. And then what we do is run software basically that gives us a fiber optic design, GPON they call it. Gigabit passive optical network is what it stands for, GPON design, and overlay that on the town. And so what that gives us is, okay, here's, and then from that with the software, we develop a bill of material. And so what that's doing is two things. It's given us a first brush at, okay, what's kind of the cost to do this if I want to do fiber to the premise. And second, what it does is give us a pretty good detail of what we can put into the RFP and say, okay, now bid towards this. You can change it. You're not stuck to this exact bid, but it gives them a lot of data, gives a lot of data to the vendors to bid.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's the intent. So yeah, and then I would say the RFP process, you're, in the same ballpark, $5,000,
Mm-hmm.
5 to
Okay.
5. That one's a little more expensive depending on the time we put into it, but $5,000 to $6,000.
And does Mission have a certain I don't know, requirement that the community has to buy in? That is, could we get if we were to get all of that money, whatever that number is, from grants or other sources,
Mhm.
that would be added. That would be fine by you. We don't have to do
It is.
50%
Not
community
for us.
buy-in.
No, we're just
Or- Okay.
We're just an independent contractor, so it doesn't for us. And along that same line, we understand budgets before COVID. We understand budgets during COVID,
Yeah.
certainly for towns. So we don't look for that money up front if it can't be there. Right, we'll take a small percentage and we'll just keep working through it. And if we need to set up quarterly payments, now's a good time of year, right? That we, as an example, because you in particular aren't part of the town, so there's certainly nothing budgeted for the town for broadband.
Mhm.
So we got to get to July, assuming it's a July 1 fiscal year. So do we need to make a little bit of investment up front, and maybe there's a bill the first quarter, maybe not in January, maybe we push it to February because we're pushing the end of the year, believe it or not now. And then another bill in the second quarter, and then get to, while you're building for the budget for next year, we try to get to that budget year where there might be some money to finish paying it off. And so, we work with towns on trying to get creative on payments.
Sure. Yeah, well, I asked that because we've talked to some firms, consulting firms, and as you know, they would like to see the town put up a certain percentage of the money coming from their coffers, as it were.
Right. Sure.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions?
Have you had any experience working with LCI at all?
We have not for Mission Broadband, but
Okay.
all of us have worked with Shirley and her team for many years. Yeah, from
see. Okay.
outside of Mission Broadband. How's that? Yeah.
I see. Okay. So no, you're not strangers.
Nope, we're not.
Gotcha.
So from everything you know about Lincolnville, what do you think is the right path, if you could just spitball, for Lincolnville in terms of throwing our hat in with LCI and just supporting them, building out our own dark fiber funded by taxpayers, partnering with other towns?
Yeah, I think that, adding those other towns, Josh, that was kind of a key point of that, right? So they're a classic return on investment, right? They're going to if they haven't done a survey, they would put a survey out that says, what's my take rate? If I can get to a certain take rate, I'll build down that street, right? Or I'll build that area. That's the model that a lot of the, not just Lincolnville, a lot of the vendors will do, whether it's, Consolidated or, even Spectrum, right? They're just going to try to get that upfront understanding that says, okay, if I can get that commitment from that area, I will build to that. And then, so that's a problem with density at times, right? So as a residences gets farther apart, there's less per square mile or less per mile of the road. It makes it a harder investment for those folks. So that's where that complementary, if you will, like you were just saying, how much, here's the example. I don't know what it's going to cost, right? We'll take it down. It's going to cost $5 million, right? That's what the vendor said, $5 million to build it. Great. What are you willing to do it for? Because I do know as a business, you put fiber on the poles, your stock just went up, right? There's value to you as a business when you put fiber on the poles. So even though you say it's going to cost you, what are you willing to do it for? So if they can knock money off that, then you try to find what other construction grant money out there, Connect Maine or federal. And I can talk about the federal here in a little bit if you want to. But what federal, is there federal money there? So now you're coming down to, okay, what is the town going to buy, right? What's the town owe from, that $5 million? Can we get it down to $1 million? Can we, what's the cost that we can get that down to? So certainly an incumbent's worth looking towards. But if you want to add in other towns, right? So now in Lincolnville's case, Lincolnville Tel, LCI, maybe it's a town they're not into, but they're looking at it and it's close by. And if it's next door, well, they can expand their network, right? As opposed to jumping, up to Holton. That wouldn't be a good fit for LCI, right? Because it's too far away. But if I've got it in the proximity of my trucks and my network, and I can expand upon that, that could be attractive. That could be attractive.
So LCA has told us that even if the town took no action, they still plan on running fiber down every the rest of the roads in Lincolnville in the next 4 years.
Next 4 years, yeah.
And so what we're struggling with as a committee is, that's great and all, but already their prices are much higher than we think is reasonable for a much slower service than people pay for really anywhere else in the country, it seems.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I mean, I'm paying $105 a month and I've got 20 up, 20 down.
And is it just for internet? Or is it?
I get a free phone line that I don't want. It goes to nowhere.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's required for whatever reason.
Yeah. Because of marketing.
Yeah, John, do you know anything about that? I've been told several times that these were, I'm not going to say FCC requirements, but in some way there was a requirement in the town of Lincolnville that we had to have a phone connection. Would there be any truth to that?
The incumbent, right, what they call the ILEC, incumbent local exchange carrier, is bound by PUC statutes and federal that they have to offer a phone line. And it has to be able to be backed up, battery backed up, and all of that. They have to offer it.
Just offer it, not that.
Yeah, I don't believe that has to
service.
be provided. No, if a customer doesn't want it, they don't have to keep it. But it is a requirement that they have to offer it. It has to be available because they are considered the ECT, the local exchange in that area. So, yeah.
And the way LCI's explained it to me is, as you said, we have to offer it. We're that local exchange, and so because of that, we have additional costs that we need to pass on to the customers.
Right, because they got the whole switching equipment back there, right? It's designed around phone switching equipment, right? That can do everything that makes a phone call go from here to California in 2 seconds, and if it doesn't, we're wondering what's happening, right? So, yeah.
I wanted to come back to Josh's question because I may have just not understood what you said, but we have the tension between having LCI eventually saying that they'll bring broadband to everybody. There's quite a bit of dissatisfaction in town about quality issues with them. Okay. So there's the option of kind of waiting that out and trying to speed that up. But as we've kind of gone through this process, we've learned that having control of the dark fiber, having control of quality and who comes on for service providers, and having some competition, that over the long term, that seems make a lot of sense to us. Could you give some feedback on those two options? I mean, the thing that's kind of tantalizing for us is we have some broadband, but is it really going to work in the future for what the whole community needs versus taking on, either a regional or a town-owned infrastructure? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, competition. I think I'm a fan of competition. How's that? It certainly would change, right? It would change. Competition changes pricing. That's what it comes down to. I think the conversation potentially with Lincolnville is to understand from their perspective what I hear you saying isn't any really different than any probably incumbent, whether that's the cable company or Fairpoint, Central, CCI now. The quality. Is it the quality of the customer call? Is it the quality of the service? Is it phone quality? Is it bandwidth issues? I'd be curious how Josh does with 20 over 20. So that's a different conversation with them to say, okay, can we strike a deal? Because it's going to cost you X millions of dollars over the next 4 years. That if we were to participate in that payment, can we drive your price down? And can you give us better service level agreements? What's happening there? Outside of that, it's okay. Then we're going to put out an RFP. If nothing else, we're going to get to the RFP stage and we're going to see some vendors and we're going to see some pricing, right? It wouldn't hurt to do that to get a comparison price, because if they say it's going to cost us X, well, we've got other vendors that say they can do it for Y, and is it worth it, right? Now you can kind of do a stare and compare of what they're telling you and what the open market's telling you. And the dark fiber is a conversation that we can have as well at some point, but it's an interesting model. There's a variety of ways to look at that as well, David. you may own the asset, or a vendor, some other vendor. There's some vendors that are out there that just want to come in and build that asset, and they don't want to provide services, but they want to own that asset. And here's why: because every time a internet service provider or a fiber to the premise company builds fiber, it adds value to the network. It adds value to basically to the balance sheet is what it comes down to. That's the bottom line.
Would that apply in your experience for municipalities if they were to own the dark fiber?
Yep.
I assume their stock would go up as well.
Well,
Or maybe not.
Yeah, they don't. What the value comes for a municipality is now you can say, I have a fiber, backbone network. So now, as far as anybody that wants to move there, and we hear those stories, if you guys haven't already, and there's going to be more coming because of the pandemic. We were in one meeting. I think it was Island Institute had it. And one lady in the audience said, "Look, I moved here. I didn't give broadband a second thought. I just came here from the city, thought I could do my job. Don't put this down," because there was a newspaper person there. "Don't write this down, but I can't do my job. I am just faking it as I go, trying to do it." So the point being is, my understanding from the Maine Municipal Association, but that your real estate value goes up because that's being asked now, right? How are the schools? How's the power? How's emergency services? And is there broadband in the area?
Yeah.
Is there adequate broadband in the area? So there's value to a town, absolutely. The other thing that it adds, depending on where a town is growing to, is, you hear a little bit more about smart cities, right?
Yeah.
And so whether that's, needed for Lincolnville or not, but, you can go to the street light level, you can control street lights, you can control traffic lights, you can control a variety of different things, water and sewer, and just a variety of things that's happening in cities. And so that's why we kind of talk, and we look at building a broadband network. If we're working with a community that's going to own it, we overbuild it, like I said, usually by 20%, because you want to take some of those fibers, I'll say, and build the municipality its own network, separate from the internet, right? So you don't have any security issues. You just build basically if you can think of it as a fabric of your own fiber owned just for the municipality, period. And they put their own equipment on it. It's a private network.
I see.
When we spoke with another firm a while back, one thing they were offering and we asked about is doing a study of basically what are the options in Lincolnville and what makes sense and the payback periods for all the different options. That's something we haven't really talked about on this committee, I think, in a while, because I think we're all sort of on board that the town or the town or a co-op owning dark fiber seems to make the most sense. But is that something that Mission Broadband does as well?
So I don't think I quite understood from a financial perspective, or I didn't.
A study of basically all the different broadband options.
Oh, the providers in the
town.
area? Yes. Yeah, we would look at that.
Okay.
We would look at that, to include, there's always satellite that's out there right now as well.
Okay.
Excuse me.
And you get a lot of that too from I looked at your survey and I don't remember it now. If it was, if you say, who's your provider?
Yeah, we do.
Usually one of the questions we ask is, okay, who are you using? Because sometimes you get a, one that nobody's ever heard of before.
Yeah.
Speaking of not having heard a great deal about, could you talk a few moments about the horizon for satellite and what that would actually offer?
Sure. So the current satellite feeds obviously are the, high orbit, kind of moving with the Earth at the same time.
It's the 30,000 satellite.
Yeah. So that one is the biggest challenge we have there is latency. So the time it takes, physics, right? I say the same thing about copper, right? Copper's slow. It can only go 1,000 feet, whatever. It's physics, and you can't change physics. You can only blame Sir Isaac Newton. That's all there is to it. So it's the time it takes for a signal to get, from an antenna on the Earth out to the satellite and back again. A lot of latency, and that doesn't work well for the internet and the things that people are trying to do, which is video, a lot of video nowadays, right? And voice. So then the low orbit are the ones that are coming out. Elon Musk's company,
Right.
like you said, putting thousands and thousands, and those are just screaming across. And so what you're doing is you're taking, that signal, and it's going to go out of sight, and you're going to bounce back to the next one and bounce back to the next one as they start, going around the earth. A lot of unknowns about those. They had a pretty good talk about bandwidth, but it hasn't been proven, and they haven't really backed up the claims just yet. So I don't dare go down that road. We keep watching it and seeing latency should not be as big an issue with those at all.
When does that become? When could that become a reality in terms of an option? Is that 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah, I was going to say till it's really solidified. Yeah, probably 5 years. They've got a lot of testing and beta and fixing and understanding of how all that's going to work.
Thank you.
Any other questions for John?
I don't think so.
All right, well, John, thank you so much for joining us.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
We really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Anytime. You guys meeting in person at all, or is everything zooming right now?
Well, hopefully someday we will. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I mean,
I say that because we're, there are a couple of really small towns we work with that can't do Zoom. So I do go, I can go.
Okay.
We'll do the face mask and all of that for sure.
Yeah.
But
sure, yeah. Well, yeah. I'm sorry. One more question. That reminds me. I remember talking with you, and you said that you were meeting with some folks in Northport. Was that?
Yep.
Is Mission working with Northport? I don't want to.
I can't say.
I don't want to ask you to say anything, but the reason
Yep.
we're just curious about other towns in the area that
Yeah.
we can partner with, as it were.
We are not under contract with Northport. Just talking to them like we are you guys right now. We're
Okay,
kind of
just-
going through that same process. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Great, thanks, John.
You're welcome, guys. Have a great evening.
Thanks a lot, John.
Thanks.
Let us know if you got any questions.
And drive safe tomorrow.
I will. Thanks.
All right. Great. Do we want to talk about the conversation we just had, or do we want to move on?
Well, I thought it was a good conversation, and I don't know, maybe it was just me, but I don't know if everyone was holding their breath while he was getting his numbers together and was about to present his final number. And anyway, when he gave his final number, I said, did I miss a zero or something? So maybe I don't understand, it seemed awfully reasonable. However, that doesn't mean that there's value there. I understand that. But it sounds to me if the town decides that a standing committee with a budget for a consultant, the standing committee wouldn't have to ask for a really large budget to get a decent amount of consulting services. If he's talking 6K or something like that, or 12, I guess.
Total, yeah. For the
12
RFP as
total
well.
with both studies, yeah.
We got a number of 15,000. We talked to the, I forget the
Right.
guy's name, but.
Cascade Advisors, yeah.
But I wasn't clear whether the two consultants were offering the same, scope of services.
It not quite. What Cascade Advisors was offering, and I'm not sure if I quite spoke to it accurately, but was basically looking at all the different possibilities for Lincolnville. Not just the incumbents, but sort of how all the different ways we could get broadband, better broadband into Lincolnville. And I think sort of looking at options that we've already ruled out. Whereas this $4,500 to $5,500 engineering survey, I think is really just doing the engineering of running dark fiber to every door. And it seems kind of obvious that's what we want, and we don't really need to look at all the other options that are inferior, I think.
It struck me as a necessary step, but it's really not a complete, set of services. It sort of gets us to the point of an RFP, so we know how much this might cost, and then you have the whole question of how you decide to finance it, where you need someone else.
Yeah, Stephen.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that point because what is very relevant right this minute is whether we ask the town for any dollars at all, and whether we put together, because the next step, I think we all recognize, is going to require spending some money to hire some consultant. And we will probably want to interview a few choices, I would guess, and come up with a range of prices. But I think, you know, I was struck by how low that number was, and I didn't find it totally credible. I also have to say I was struck that he couldn't name any of the towns he was currently working with. That is not the sort of thing, if you're working with 6 towns, that you should have to go and look up. You ought to be able to say, you know, we just completed work with Tobig Island, and I just thought it was odd that he didn't have anyone on the tip of his tongue. I do want to mention that I spoke separately to Susan Corbett at the National Digital Equity Center in Machias. I don't know if any of you are familiar with her, but she's sort of a famous personality in Maine on the national level. And she was previously with Axiom, which is probably a competitor. And she's no longer with Axiom. She brought in somebody else, Mark Wellett, to run Axiom. But Axiom is another one of those companies like, I think, like Mission, who provide many of the same sorts of services as consultants. So if we were going to pick someone, I think we would want to have a list of candidates and then all hear from them and together make a decision about, you know, who we might want. I spoke to Susan separately for the research I do for the Brookings project I'm working on broadband, and she's an incredible resource and has worked with, you know, a lot of towns, Monhegan, Bath, Cranberry Isles, Cliff Island, Somerville, Georgetown, and did think that you know, we would be looking at a $15,000 to $20,000 budget. That was her number, not because she does this kind of work anymore, but because she used to. And she did also say that if we did apply to places like the Island Institute or Connect Maine, that having some skin in the game from the town, I'd put in the draft 5,000 or requesting up to 5,000. And then making sure that, you know, it was not more than like 20% or 25% of whatever the final contract value is, since we don't know what that is, might be one way to go. But I just wanted to mention those two data points, because if we do go to the town now asking for some follow-up, you know, we'll have the question that we have to decide of, do we want to ask for any money from the town?
Okay. If there's nothing else, we can move on to the survey. So I just want to give a little update on how it's going. Let me share my screen. So far we have 309 responses digitally, which is great. One thing I wanted to note is when we issue the final report, I would like to have every single one of these responses under here and the general comments included in the report. So the select board and the public can read all of these, because I think this is one of the most important parts. People can just see the thoughts of, you know, 158 Lincolnville residents on this. And David Kinney told me there's at least 20 or so paper copies that have come in. It's such a low number that I'm happy just to do it myself, going to the town office.
Well, Josh, when David said that, was he referring to ones that just students brought back from their parents? Or was he also referring to ones that have come back in from the mail survey?
I think he was referring to the total number of paper surveys.
So should we expect any more from the mailing that went out?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I just don't know. I actually didn't get a survey in the mail. Did all of you get a survey in the mail?
No. Oh,
I'm seeing.
you got one? Good.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, so David, Mike, myself, Jonathan, did you get one?
yes.
Okay. So it is what it is. It went out. We didn't all get it. That's fine.
Yeah.
Can't do anything about that. I do know they were struggling with all the mailers, all the political mailers, and maybe
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
something happened. But I'm sort of blanking on our deadlines of when we thought we would sort of not turn off the survey, but start working with that data.
Well, I thought
November 1st.
refresh, remind me if I'm wrong, but I thought the whole point was that, we want to issue this report to the town before we go out of business. And the survey results are a key part of that report.
Yeah.
And all of that is happening within the next month.
Yeah. And we're issuing our report the 23rd.
Correct.
I believe. Okay, so yeah.
So that means the survey results and the summary and all of that, I assume, unless I put it as an attachment to the report, actually.
Yeah.
So it was all in one package. So it would
Yeah.
all have the same due date of November 23.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I guess I'll just ask the committee, when do we want to say, okay, we're done collecting, let's start, because once we make that decision, I'll download the spreadsheet, I'll send it to all of you, and I guess we can all dive in. I'm not sure how much survey analytics we want to do, but we'll all at least have the data to work with.
I think the sooner the better.
Okay. All right. Well, it's Thursday, the 29th, I think. Yeah, early next week, I'll go in. I will add those other surveys, and then it'll be there, and I'll send it out.
Great.
Well, yeah, Josh. So Josh, if you find out that between now and next week the number has just grown immensely, give me a call, and I'd be happy. You could give half of them to me.
Okay.
If that works, yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
But if it's still 25, please don't bother calling.
Okay. It shouldn't take long.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions about the survey?
Good job.
Okay, thank you.
No, I think it's great.
Okay, so let's move on to item number 6, discussion about the report to the select board. I'm not sure how we want to start this. I've got the Google Doc here in front of me, and I have David's other recommendation option. I guess.
Perhaps David could explain the alternative approach.
Mike and I were just chatting today, and that sparked some ideas, and I just wrote that down and got it out. So there wasn't more than just throwing that out. I guess the way I would start the discussion is to make sure that we're all in agreement about where we are on the recommendation, and then that leads into the report. I remember, I think 2 meetings ago, Steve had that beautiful, simple moment when he said in 2 or 3 sentences something, and Jonathan said, that's it,
Yeah.
And I felt like we kind of lost that a little bit in the stuff I was seeing. I mean, it was clear that we're asking, to become a standing committee and get some money. But and maybe I'm just getting a little confused myself, but I was left unclear about, where the group is right now on, are we saying that we're ready to make a recommendation beyond just keeping working and getting some consulting? Is that what we're recommending? Or are we recommending a different path, the dark fiber path or some type of regional path? So I was left kind of unclear. So that would help me to hear, because maybe everybody's clear and I'm just not. But what is our recommendation? And what level are we at to make the, are we more high level, let's keep working this and get some help with consulting monies, or are we actually going to the selectmen to give them a view of where we think we're going? Because we're never going to be totally ready to totally commit to something, but are we messaging that this is the direction we think we want to go in, or are we not there yet?
Well, I think there's probably I think there's a range of opinion on the committee as to where we are. I think that there's a substantial portion of the committee that is in an advocacy mode in terms of going to a municipal service. And I think there's others of us, including myself, that still think that we're in a position where we're going to look to the next step, which I think is, having a standing committee with an agenda and a commitment to engage a consultant to do an evaluation of what's out there and how we proceed. I'm sort of more in favor of the other one, which is, sort of taking that position. We've done the survey. The survey has come back. We have the results of the survey for you. That was our charge, sort of working off the charge that we received. And it seems to me that there was some consensus on the side of on the committee that the concept of a municipal, municipally owned service was one of the options that seemed possible to us. And it seemed to me that we would sort of set it up on that basis, that's one of the alternate routes for the town, and that we feel we need to have a consultant to help us make that decision, which would be made not by this ad hoc committee, but by our successor committee, which would have a charge to actually do the investigation, hire the consultant to be able to give the town a sense of its options. And it sort of ties into what consultancy we're going to be seeking initially, whether it's how much is this going to cost if we're going to do it, no matter how we finance it or own it, or whether we want to go directly to advocating for municipal service. I know that at least some on the committee who are very much convinced that municipal service is the right way to go. I'm not sure that I'm there yet, but I'm certainly feel that we're in a position to offer a set of options and to report what's gone on in terms of our survey and the people we've spoken to. I don't know if that overlays with what you've heard, David, or whether I'm going off in my own direction as well.
If I may, let me just address what I tried to do in this first very rough draft that I beg all of you to forgive how rough it is. But I did try to stick with I did go back and listen to what I said in the meeting.
What did you say? Could you repeat it?
Well, I said, there's two parts to I said, number one, we got to look at the charge to the committee. And the report needs to respond to the charge to the committee. So that's why I start with that in the thing here. Then I said there are two parts to the response. There's what we've done, which is A, recap work to date, and what we proposed, which is B, recommendations going forward. So there are really two sections, A and B, to this 2-page cover. So the report is actually only 2 pages. It looks a lot longer because of all the attachments and all the edits, but the guts of it is 2 pages. What have we done so far, and what are we proposing doing going forward? Now, in terms of going forward, and this really addresses George, the key point that you're raising, which is spot on, is how far out on the diving board do we want to go at this point in prejudging what we will be recommending down the road once we have the benefit of more time and particularly working with consultants? The approach that I took in the summary recommendations going forward, which is B, which starts at the bottom half of page 2.
Let me just share it.
Which George, cleaned up a lot, but the basic points are, one, that the town should look beyond just LCI. So that is a value statement. We are saying that, you know, and frankly, at that point, I'm interpreting the results of the survey, which is that the majority of the survey respondents were not satisfied with the service currently available from LCI, either in terms of speed or cost or customer service or whatever it may be. But the bottom line was that the reason we're having this conversation is because the status quo is not sufficient. So that's a value judgment. We're saying we don't believe that it's okay as it is now, and we don't believe we should sit back and wait for it to get better. So we do believe that the town should look beyond existing incumbents. That's what point one says. And it says the only other alternative is municipally financed in one way or another, either independently or in conjunction with other towns. It's not like there is a different private company who's going to come in and overbuild LCI. So when you say we want an alternative to LCI, by definition, that means a municipal alternative, because Spectrum is not going to come to Lincolnville and overbuild LCI. So that means there isn't another private company, or at least that's what I was saying in this point. Therefore, the only other option is some kind of municipal, either on our own or in conjunction with neighboring communities, many of which are already well advanced in this process. Then the second point is, we don't know enough to even do the request for proposal. We need professional help for that. So that's the second point. The third point is that that additional work, and I debated which order to put these in, but the third point, which was number 4, but would now be number 3, is the charge to the new that this consultant needs to report to someone, needs to be overseen by someone. And that's when I'm suggesting that the broadband committee be made continued or whatever, extended, and that it have specific responsibilities, of which the first one is retaining a consultant within some budget parameters, exploring financing options, recognizing that they're not going to be any commitments, and a preliminary implementation plan that covers all of the technical and operational aspects within the mission, which I described much further up, which was for universal affordable access for everyone in the town. And then I added a 5th point, which was some money. And that came from the conversation that I had, that I remembered from our group and from the minutes that I read, because I went back and I looked at the minutes. David and Josh both sent me the minutes because I'm the new kid on the block here, so I don't know a lot of the work that was done except for having read it. And I did go back and watch some of the recorded YouTube sessions, by the way, which was super helpful. I mean, it took a lot of time, but it was really instructive. And I realized that, there should be some amount that we get from the town, if nothing else, just to make it clear that the Board of Selectmen actually are on board with this and want to take this seriously. And that's an important thing for us to talk about, because not everyone may agree with that. There may be people who think that unless we get it all grant funded, and we shouldn't go ahead. So that's a substantive point. And then, of course, I did these attachments. Now, after all of that was done, Mike came up with another approach, which I think is very much worth talking about, which is what appears in attachment 7, which is the very end of the document on page
Can you all see
11.
attachment 7 now?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and you know, and I would let Mike speak to this, but my only substantive comment was, if we decide to go with these 3 points, they would replace what is currently, or replace some of what is currently in section B, rather than be an attachment, because this is way too important to have as the last attachment to the document. This should be in the heart of the document. So we should talk about the 3 points in the Mike's draft and see whether or not we want to include them or some of them, or replace some of the ones that are there now. But in any case, my suggestion would be that that be the new section B.
Well, yeah, I put those in there partly to respond to one of the points in the charge, which was number 7. I can't remember the exact words, but it was required. It asked for what options might be available to the town, or actions that it might take, I believe is the phrase that they use. Anyway, and I'm sorry, that I ended up putting it in an appendix because I didn't know where else to put it, Steve. I didn't know how to take it and put it someplace in the body of the text. So I just tacked it on at the end.
Totally fine.
Yeah, I figured we figured out. And Cheryl, I apologize for all the typos that you had to deal with, but thanks for dealing with them. I wasn't paying attention to my spelling.
How much do the options laid out in attachment 7 overlap with what we already have in the body of the document?
Well, to tell you the truth, I really couldn't quite make out what was in the document because of all the edits.
Yeah,
I'm just not very good at
that. That's the problem with having too many pencils at work.
Yeah, and
but I think if we go back to right, we're sort of
let me take a stab at making at answering that question. What's the difference between the 3 points in Mike's revision? The first is that I didn't include do nothing as an option. Because I presumed that A, the fact that we exist, and B, the fact that we went to the trouble to do a survey, the results of which are that 75% plus of the community is unhappy, I presumed that doing nothing was not an option. Maybe that's wrong, and maybe doing nothing should be listed as an option, and we should wait for them. We should wait for LCI to go 4 more years. We could add that if people want that. I
would think that would be a prudent approach, especially since this was sort of triggered by LCI's, coming to us at the initiation of the committee, seeking a little bit of our skin in the game to go and get the Connect Maine grant. I think it's good to add, even if we just end up sort of tacitly dismissing it. But I think politically, it's probably the better move.
I think we should also leave the door open. If we followed the approach that we're all leaning towards to further explore the municipally owned infrastructure, I think at the same time we should leave the door open to LCI reacting to that or improving their game and coming back to us with a faster build out. And I think part of this should recognize that, there's the option not to do nothing, but to work with LCI or be patient with LCI, or the options that we're talking about here, but not make them not count either one of those out, because who knows what comes about over time.
So let me ask a question. If that were the case, would we still hire an outside consultant?
Yeah, we'd keep doing what we're doing, but I don't think we would foreclose, continuing communications with LCI and kind of signaling to them that, the reason we're doing this is we haven't accepted what they've done to date for the town, and they would have to really come forward with something much better.
Yeah, Cheryl.
What if you took numbers 2 and 3 in the addendum, the last page, and put them where number 1 is in section B? So the recommendations going forward, if you took that number 1 and put it there, they want the 2 and 3 where number 1 is, if I'm being clear, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I see.
So that number 1 would become an option along with the new 1 and 2 from below. Number 1 would become 3, and you take 1 and 2 from
no,
what Mike put it.
Well,
I mean, there would be increasing activity. You know, let's sit on our hands.
well,
Let's wait and let's have further conversations, or then let's look beyond. I mean, if you want to look at the options.
I guess somehow combine 2 and 3 somewhere in between 1 and 2, I guess is what I would say. Again, with all those crossouts, it's really hard to picture it in there, but I think if that was reworked, I personally like the layout of this. And if you took all the crossouts out, I think it would look and sound really like what we've been talking about. So I don't know if we want to go ahead and have that done and then we can all look at it again.
Steve, could you run with that?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, of course. I mean, and the point of this markup is that because everyone is right, it's impossible to follow.
Right.
So of course we want a cleaner version, and of course there will be multiple more drafts. And what Cheryl is saying is eminently doable, and I'm perfectly happy to take a stab at doing that. I do want to, though, also highlight, and this is what we'd agreed to do on this call, is talk about the substantive issues as opposed to the stylistic ones. So this is an important decision that we're making now, if we all agree, which is that I would take 1 and 2 in Mike's attachment 7 and move them up into this section B, which, if everyone is okay with that, that's the first action item that I'm going to do. Then we can move on to the next substantive item.
That makes sense to me. Yeah.
I wonder if, rather than talking about those options, we should, in the the front end of this piece, whether we should frame what we learned from the survey. I'm just trying to figure out how to highlight the survey more boldly in this.
Well, the survey is A. So A is summary of work to date, including the broadband survey and interpreting what it tells us. And B is, based on all of that, recommendations going forward. So the survey is first.
Okay.
And I'm imagining a pretty lengthy description of key findings. Like the ones, David, that you asked me to include. I actually think it makes more sense for this to be in the first part of the report, that it really stands out. People are unhappy, and look at these numbers.
Right, because that frames the whole direction that we're going in.
Exactly. We're not saying this because we all just have these different opinions from talking to experts. This is guided by, these numbers by the actual community.
And I think we could tie together the survey results with the 3 options that Mike identified, and then kind of lead into why we're saying that something more than, being patient and waiting is what we have to do. Because, the town is saying that the status quo is not working, even if you slightly improve the status quo over time.
Mm-hmm.
It will be good to see this when it's all cleaned up. I actually read highlighted stuff all day, but this one really is giving me a hard time because it's just got so much stuff going on.
Well, I'm happy to do that. Although I should say I'm also very happy for someone else to do the next draft, having done the first draft.
I'd be willing to rewrite it if I'll do it. I mean,
I think that would be great if you're
That
willing
would
to
be
do
great.
it. Sure. Yeah.
Yep.
That
That used to be my job, editing, so I don't have a problem.
would be great. So
Cheryl, I'll give you access to edit, and then you can just dive into the same document.
Okay, excellent.
um,
But I need a clarification on, I think David said something about the 3, in attachment 7, there were 3 options. Are we going to include number 1, the do nothing, as well in the beginning?
In my opinion, I would, because I'm just imagining myself as part of the audience reading this, and that's what I would like to hear.
Okay,
That I have the option to chicken out, however you want to talk, however you want to characterize it.
I agree.
You know,
Yeah.
and I also tend to think I don't want to get too Machiavellian nuanced, but that gives the audience, some people on the select board, the opportunity to use that, but then go ahead and do something else. For example, release $5,000 at the same time, and say, well, maybe in releasing $5,000 for a consultant and creating a standing committee, we can find out if that was a good idea. We can. They can explore whether doing nothing is a good idea or not.
okay, I understand. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if that was clear or not. Yeah.
No, I didn't understand that, but now I do. I printed out that entire thing, and I don't see the results of the survey. Is that a separate document?
No, it's just, it depends when you printed it, but I have it, it's under page 9 right now.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's why I don't have it.
Okay,
I
and then I
printed
added a little note saying this is preliminary and it'll be updated with final survey results.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay.
And Cheryl, you have access now to edit.
Okay, good. So that attachment 3 is going in there.
and by the way, as attachment 1 was the charge to the broadband committee, which is the first attachment, and which I have. Obviously, I got it from Josh and from David Kinney. But if you need that as well, Cheryl.
Yeah,
So
is that in there too?
it is not in there now.
No.
I actually don't have a digital copy.
I do.
Like, I mean, I've got a PDF, but it's a scanned version of it.
Oh, that's what I have.
Yeah.
But that's fine.
You know, I could probably just ask David Kinney and he would send it. So I think that would be better than having a scanned PDF in there.
Josh, the other thing is, I did this little outline of our meetings, and I realized afterwards that I didn't have the meeting where we met with the people from down east. And when I went back and looked at the minutes you sent, I didn't see the minutes from whenever that meeting was. So maybe I missed it, but also maybe it wasn't in the stuff that you sent out to us. Because that should be added to the timeline.
Yeah, those are the 10:08 of the 9:24 minutes that we just approved when Dan Sullivan came.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
sent those out last night.
Okay, so
So
I'll add that to this and then send it back to Josh.
yeah. They need to be added as well. And I assume, I don't know why we couldn't, because we'd like to approve minutes, why we couldn't just add on the timeline that we met with John Doherty as well. Yeah.
Yep.
You can have,
Okay, great.
So the other substantive things that would be on my radar that we would need to talk about before Cheryl can do some editing are the two items that are on my mind. Others may have others. Is the point that I added about the $5,000, which we didn't discuss before and which we should. And then also the late arriving today from Jordan, I guess, I don't know, and David, but Jordan, with their one pager with the 5 items. Everyone has that?
Are you talking about what David sent out earlier this evening?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. I do have that, yeah.
It says broadband committee recommendations. The committee has identified the following options for addressing the town's broadband internet needs.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that document we need to talk about, and the $5,000.
okay.
Okay, why don't we start with the $5,000? Let me start with that.
I think that makes sense, because I think Steve's correct that that's what the Island Institute wanted us to, something in that range.
Mhm.
That was
So
75.
something
Yeah.
between 3 and 5, but let's ask
Okay.
for 5, because that's
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I just got a new, I'll send it to everybody. Island Institute just sent out a notice, I think today, saying that they've got a new tranche of money for this type of thing.
So yeah, I think we certainly should ask for a budget of at least $5,000.
Mhm.
The standing committee and that.
I agree that it should, that the committee should have a budget, because it would, it would just be a darn shame if it couldn't pursue getting a consultant because it didn't have seed money,
Right.
you know.
But the town without a special town meeting can't give us this money till next spring or summer, right?
That's right. Unless the select board went into contingency, and I don't see that happening.
I don't either, but
We need a special meeting.
Budget season, well, either that, but budget season's right around the corner, so this is actually good timing to request it, but then we'd have to wait till next year
Right.
to do a special meeting.
I did hear, just as we heard tonight from John, but I heard the same thing from Axiom, that we don't necessarily have to have all the money in the
Right.
bank before we start.
right.
Yeah.
But, at least as far as the Island Institute is concerned, we could say even now in an application that we're intending to apply for this money.
Mhm.
And we hasn't yet been approved, but they would at least know that that's our intention.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, no, yeah, if we could say in any grant application, or, that we will have the money on June 1st when the budget is approved by the voters, and it's in the budget to be approved, I think that would carry the day, the application.
Now, the only other point on this, before Cheryl goes ahead and includes that new .5 about the $5,000, is I had thought, I didn't put it in here, but I had thought and maybe that's just getting too complicated, if we wanted to say $5,000, though not to exceed 25% of the total cost of the eventually negotiated consultant. So it's up to $5,000. But if the consultant ends up being $10,000, then we would only need $2,500.
I'd leave it out.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that just gets confusing.
The money's appropriated, you don't need to spend it, so.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So that's great. That's one issue. Then the other issue is to turn to the document that we just got. Exactly.
So I think, we've already covered this. I didn't realize that Mike had put in that section 7 option. So he and I were chatting today. When we got done, I just wrote down thoughts and fired this out to you guys without a lot more thought. So I think this is kind of triggering the same discussion. Should we be laying out what the options are? And I think the way that Mike did it with the 3 options is fine. This gets into a little bit more detail.
The substantive issue, the substantive difference that I saw when I read this, really just having gotten it, was this talks about Camden and Rockport as being, it says the committee recommends the 4th option, join with Camden and Rockport
which I think. Sorry,
Yeah, it does, but I think your explanation for, don't get too far out the plank and kind of frame things more generally. I kind of put that in there to more trigger discussion, but your discussion already kind of satisfied me.
Oh, so you give up already?
I do, because waving the Camden Rockport flag in front of the selectmen at this point probably is not the best strategy.
Yeah.
Although now let me add another thing. I mean, my practical side sees that Camden and Rockport are about to hire someone like we just talked to tonight, and they're already ready to go. And we could piggyback on that and probably get it done sooner and cheaper, and start developing a relationship with the people that are, kind of doing the same work that we're doing, and perhaps pull Northport into it too. It drives me crazy that every town's, kind of starting afresh on this, and everybody's, doing the same thing. But, and that's why I put that down, but.
The fact of the matter is that the first thing that has to happen, everyone has said the same thing, is counting the polls and knowing the number of road miles. And that's going to be different in each town. So you're not really piggybacking off of someone else's work by figuring out how many polls there are in Camden, because that's not going to affect how many there are.
No, what I'm saying though, if they are ready, I forget who they said they were going to hire, but they're ready to go. And
I just emailed all of you at 6:28. Breaking news.
Yes.
That they're actually taking a big step back. Let's see. We're taking a pause with respect to going ahead in the direction which we were going to do, which was to do a high-level design of the system. And now we're backing up to doing a feasibility study with an engineering firm that's a premier national group. So they're actually, So I'm not sure why that happened, but
excuse me, Josh, I don't have that in front of me. But didn't she also go on to say that she welcomes, she invited us to get in touch with her to see if we could work with them along this new path that they're doing? Yeah.
She said that afterwards, but again, we can all see Lincolnville isn't anywhere close to being able to say, yes, we're interested in joining you. I mean,
right. Yeah.
So,
and we're keeping it as an option in the ones we have there. So we're not foreclosing it. We're just not committing to it.
Right. And that's why I'm okay with your approach. If we get the 5,000 and we find that we can do it most efficiently with Northport or Rockport, we can still pursue those. And I think it would cloud the whole presentation right now if we put those names in there.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Anything else on this agenda item?
Well, just thanks to Cheryl.
Yes,
Just
indeed.
how
And
soon,
thanks to Stephen, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are great. Thank you very much. Yeah.
how soon do you want me to have this completed?
Yesterday.
Tomorrow morning?
I was going for yesterday, but tomorrow morning would work. Sure. Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping we can meet again in 2 weeks. Maybe a week. Is that?
I only need a few days. I just don't, I mean, I couldn't do it tomorrow, but I can do it within a few days. So.
How about at your first convenience?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Steve, thank you very much.
Yeah, that was
Oh, it's great.
great
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Okay. Let's see. With that said, so Cheryl has an action item. I have an action item to go and include those paper versions and send out the survey. Are there any other action items for members of the committee?
I'll add that. I'll clean up the timeline.
Okay. And then I'll also ask David Kinney for a digital copy of the charge.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Let's move on to non-agenda items. Do we have anything?
Oh, I just wanted to mention that I was just on a Zoom phone call thingy with Jared Golden, representative for CD2. And he put me in touch with one of his assistants. His name is buried in here someplace. Anyway, regarding federal sources for funding. And so I'll follow up with him, and if we learn anything applicable to us, I'll get it out to the group.
Great.
USDA stuff. I think it was probably a lot of the same sources that
RDOF.
John mentioned. Yeah,
Yeah, it's RDOF. Which,
I think it was. Yeah.
RDOF is going to be a large pot of money.
Okay.
And Angus King's office is also very much prepared to help us with that same thing. And I'm sure once we find out who the other senator is, we might be able to get help there too. But it's definitely, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be for the early consultant money, the small money, but for the bigger money for sure.
I think he was talking big money. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well, when do we pick our next meeting?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Getting ahead of myself. What about 2 weeks from now? So that would be the 12th.
That should be plenty of
That's
time.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Thursday, November 12th.
Great.
Which would probably be our last meeting before November 23rd, when we issue the report and go out of business.
Oh, yeah.
Well, maybe we will all be reborn again, and we'll be phoenixes. Yes.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else? All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded by George. All right. Any discussion? All right. I'll call for a vote. Mike?
Yes.
Gina? Okay. Jonathan?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
David?
Yep.
And I vote yes too. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yep.
Thanks a lot.
Go out and
Thank you,
vote.
everyone.
Yes, indeed.
Go
Yeah.
vote. Good night.
You bet.
Good night.
Night.
The meeting.